I'm actually going to approach this from two different retrospects. One would be the person that has the iPhone 11 Pro or 11 Pro Max and is looking to upgrade to the iPhone 12 Pro Max, or someone who has an older version of an iPhone and is looking to upgrade to the latest and greatest iPhone on the market. Now, this year is actually a little bit different because it's the first year that Apple's actually differentiated their iPhones with something other than the size of the iPhone itself. When you look at the iPhone 12 Pro models, the 12 Pro and 12 Pro Max are different in their camera systems. So if you're off the bat looking for the best available camera on an iPhone, then the iPhone 12 Pro Max is definitely the way to go. Now, when compared to the iPhone 11 Pro Max, the 12 Pro is actually 2 grams heavier, which really isn't that much in the grand scheme of things. But one of the things I noticed right off the bat when dealing with the 12 Pro Max is that the screen felt physically larger than the iPhone 11 Pro Max. And the 12 Pro Max screen is a 6.7 inch OLED versus a 6.5 inch on the 11 Pro Max. And that's one of the things that really amazed me, is that the screen felt physically bigger. There's a lot of these times where phone developers say that they've increased the screen size on a certain mobile device. And when you get the mobile device, you just don't see the big difference between the old screen and the new screen. That's definitely not the case with the iPhone 12 Pro Max. You feel like the screen is more of a massive thing than on the 11 Pro Max. And that could really be because of the new boxier design that the iPhone 12s have. It lends itself to just making the screen seem like it's larger because there are no curvatures, there are no breaks, everything is just symmetrically in place, so it feels like the screen is painted onto that square boxy display. Now, one of the biggest differences between the iPhone 11 Pro Max and the iPhone 12 Pro Max is going to be that new Apple design. It's a boxier, more squared off design than you're used to with the older iPhones. The older iPhones have a little bit more of a rounded feel and a sleeker feel. Now, with this new design, it's kind of a hit or miss for me. I really like the look of this new iPhone, the squared off edges, the thickerness of the iPhone in general, if that's a word, thickerness, but it's thicker than the other iPhone were, and the 11 Pro is just, again, more rounded. This 12 is boxier, it's sharper, and I think that's where I run into a little bit of issue. Based on how I hold my phone, I tend to rest it on my pinky, or I tend to hold it with one hand and extend out still with my pinky underneath the bottom. And it seems like these sharper edges cause my hands to hurt more than it did when I was using the 11 Pro Max. I don't know if it's because the screen is bigger and the overall design is boxier, it's weighing more on my hands, but after prolonged use, my hands do hurt and those sharper edges become an issue. And it does feel a little bit more bulkier than the iPhone 11 Pro Max did. And if you throw a bigger case on it, a more protective case, this phone can actually be very bulky. Now, bulky and heavy are two completely different things. It never felt really heavy. It just felt like a lot of phone. This is a really big phone, and if you're going to be putting a case on it, it can get even bulkier, and after prolonged use, you can actually start feeling some pain. All these standard great things are here about an iPhone. You have a new bigger screen for consuming media. It feels really great watching videos on this thing. It's awesome reading text, surfing web pages. The overall experience of just consuming media through the screen just feels like a better experience because the screen itself feels larger. And if you couple that with the A14 Bionic chip within the system, everything just moves so fluently. There's no hiccups. Everything moves really crisp, and it's a great experience just navigating through the phone itself. Now, I always like to look at mobile devices from an average consumer perspective because I am just an average consumer myself. And using this device for average things like opening and closing applications, going to social media, surfing web, watching videos, editing some videos, everything just seemed to move really fast, but it didn't seem to move that much faster than it did on the iPhone 11 Pro Max. And that's really to say that I didn't see any drastic speed ups between the 11's A13 chip and the 12's A14 chip. Now, I will also preface this by saying that, maybe because we're at the beginning life cycle of the A14 chip, and as more updates come into iOS, things will start to play out a little bit differently. As more things get added to the operating system, we may see a bigger gap between what the A13 can do and the A14 can do. But my personal experience at this time, there really isn't a drastic change over how the performance of the A13 Bionic in the 11 was over the A14 seen in the 12. So where you're going to see some of the biggest advancements and advantages of picking the iPhone 12 Pro Max is going to be in its camera system. Now, I always approach camera systems as an average consumer because I'm definitely not a camera professional. I'm not a professional photographer. I'm not a professional camera reviewer. I rarely use my phone's cameras but to take really random pictures. I'm not out there taking Instagrammable, postable pictures all the time. So one of the things I really do appreciate about this camera system is the ability to just take the camera out of my pocket without any configurations and pull it out and take a picture. It really does work like that. I think with the new LiDAR sensor and the ability to really focus in and get some quick auto zooms and get some quick adjustments based on the lighting that's around you, this camera system really works great. And I think Apple put a lot of thought into it, that it does have all those bells and whistles for the more advanced professional camera people that can use it and tweak it and take some really amazing photos. But for a novice like myself who's not really great at photos, I can still pull this out in a moment that I want to capture something and not have to worry too much about missing that moment because the camera system is doing a lot of the heavy lifting for me. So an average consumer, I think, is going to really appreciate this camera system. Now here you are getting a triple camera setup. You're getting an ultra wide, a wide, and a telephoto. And because of the inclusion of the new LiDAR sensor, you are getting some improved portrait modes and some improved night shots. And they also included a 2.5x optical zoom. And some of the other bigger improvements are like night mode time lapse being added and a better image stabilization via some hardware inclusions and some software improvements as well. The Pro Max also has the ability to shoot HDR Dolby Vision at 60 frames per second, and the front-facing camera also has some improvements. You can do HDR Dolby Vision at 30 frames per second with the front-facing camera. Night mode and deep fusion were also added to the front-facing camera as well. I found that the cameras in the 11 Pro and the 12 Pro are very comparable to each other, and they have a great advantage of just giving the average person the ability to pull the camera out and start taking some really great pictures, some really great wide angle pictures, some really great portrait pictures. Now, I do find with the inclusion of the LiDAR camera on the 12, it does help the autofocusing just a little bit more than it did on the 11. And it definitely does help to have that 2.5x optical zoom, because if you want to punch in just a little bit closer in some of the pictures that you're taking, you do have that ability. And the awesome ability to shoot HDR with Dolby Vision at 60 frames per second just gives you the ability to capture some really cool, crisp video on your phone. And considering now that we use phones for not only consuming media but producing media, I can see a lot of content creators and people just in general that want to capture certain moments in time being very happy with the overall use of these cameras themselves, because they offer that ability for you to just point, shoot, and capture some really great pictures. I also find that the overall optimization of iOS has just gotten better and better over the years, which has improved the overall battery life of the phones themselves. I didn't really have any battery issues when it came to the iPhone 12 Pro Max. Even using it as a heavy user that I am, I didn't have any issues with just getting through a day with enough batteries to sustain me until the next day sometimes. And usually I go from charger to charger anyway, but I was never in a dire situation where I absolutely needed to charge this phone and it was just felt like it was the 0 hour and my phone was about to die. I never got to that situation. The battery consumption really handled my use case extremely well. Now I would be remiss not to mention the fact that Apple removed the charging brick from the boxes, making the box a little bit smaller. You do get a USB Type-C cable to Lightning connection inside the box. The charger itself that most people have though don't support USB Type-C, so that may be an issue. Apple is more than happy to sell you a charger on their website for about $20. So in retrospect, it all depends on what camp you fall in. If you fall into the camp where you want the latest and greatest iPhone, the best iPhone available on the market, then definitely the iPhone 12 Pro Max is definitely going to be that. On paper, everything is better. It has a better processor, it has a better camera system, the screen is larger, everything just works out to be a better phone than the 11 Pro Max was. But if you're someone that has an 11 Pro Max and just wants to know if it is a sizable difference to upgrade to the 12, then I would probably say no, there isn't enough noticeable everyday real world use difference that you're going to see versus the 11 Pro Max and the 12 Pro Max. So I wouldn't suggest an upgrade if that's what you're looking for. Sure, everything on paper does equate to be better, but when you get out into the real world and you're using that processor and you're using that camera, the screen, definitely you're going to see a big difference there, but you're not going to see a big difference in the pictures that you're taking. If you're just an average picture taker, you're not going to see a bigger difference in the overall movement and speed in the phone because the processor is just doing some very average things for the average user. I don't think you'll see a sizable enough difference to warrant an upgrade from the iPhone 11 Pro Max to the 12 Pro Max. And finally, if you're just coming from an older generation of iPhones altogether, I would just suggest taking a look at the slew of different iPhone 12 models available. Maybe the Pro Max is too much for you, but the iPhone 12 does still offer some great internal components and some upgraded cameras overall. So if you are coming from a previous generation of an iPhone, I think the iPhone 12 models with that new cool boxier redesign and the new internals and the new camera systems do present a really good argument for you to now upgrade to the newer generation of iPhones. These iPhones, if you upgrade now, you probably won't have to upgrade for a really long time.